Welcome. Let's talk about why men are quietly checking out of dating. It's a topic that is impossible to ignore, really. A lot of men aren't really angry about dating anymore. They're not even complaining that much. They're just checking out. Not even swearing off women, not even becoming bitter monks, just quietly opting out of the effort. And when you ask why, you'll hear a mix of things. The dating apps, they suck. A lot of bad dates, no dates at all, confusion, burnout, entitlement, you name it, you'll hear it. But there's another piece in the background that doesn't get talked about properly, I should say. And that's the kind of dating content men are constantly exposed to online, especially TikTok and the whole compilations on YouTube where people react to it. And I want to be very clear up front about this. I'm not talking about women in general. I'm not. I'm talking about a very specific type of online content persona that gets amplified because it performs extremely well online. And the problem isn't that men think these women represent all women. We're not stupid. The problem is that this content slowly changes how dating feels before men even show up. It's the TikTok entitlement persona. If you've spent more than 10 minutes on dating TikTok and even YouTube, you've seen the videos. You know exactly what I'm talking about. These women listing demands: minimum height, minimum income. I don't do coffee dates. I won't split the bill. If he can't provide, I'm not interested. If he doesn't spoil me, then don't approach me. It's loud, it's mean, it's confident, it's absolute, it's frustrating, it's draining. I get it. And you're right. And more importantly, or most importantly, I should say, this stuff is getting rewarded, which is crazy. It gets likes, shares, comments, the stitches, reactions, all of it, the whole shebang. These videos aren't designed to reflect reality, let's get that straight. But they are designed to trigger emotion, and they trigger a lot of emotions. From men who are outraged, validation from other women, and basically engagement from everyone. And the algorithm doesn't really care whether something is reasonable or not. It cares whether people react. And why does this content affect men, even the men who know better? Here's a mistake we make. We assume that men watch this and think, well, of course, all women are like this. And I hear some of that stuff online, all women are like this. But we're not stupid. We know that not all women are like this. So that's usually not what happens. What happens instead is actually subtle, but also not subtle. Men start thinking, even is even if this isn't most women, which we know it isn't, but we do think this is the climate, right? This is the climate we're operating under. They start feeling like dating is adversarial before it even begins. Like we're pinned against each other. And not because they believe every woman is entitled, but because the loudest voices frame dating as a transaction where men must prove worth and women evaluate from a position of power, and it sucks. That changes how men feel about putting in the effort. Not even angry. Some of them are. Frustrated, sure. But overall, just tired. The whole, I don't even give a shit anymore. And why this kills motivation and not necessarily attraction? Most men checking out of dating aren't doing it because they don't like women anymore. They do. They're doing it because dating starts to feel like you're walking into judgment. You are under constant evaluation. The rules are unclear. There's an asymmetric expectation. And add that on top of dating apps that don't convert effort into outcomes, bad dates where expectations don't match reality, and ghosting and much more. And eventually, men stop asking, how do I do better? Men start asking, why the fuck am I doing all of this? And that's a huge shift. Bad dates reinforce the narrative that you hear online. And this is where the things stack. Men go on dates where there's little curiosity, very little effort from the woman, little warmth, little playfulness, but plenty of expectation. Not all dates, sure, not all of them, but enough of them. I've been there, I've had those dates, so guys, I feel you. So, when we as guys or men in general, when we see these TikTok videos that sound entitled, it doesn't feel hypothetical anymore. It feels like it confirms something that we've already experienced. You see? That's a really weird position to be in. And again, it's not even rage, but it is recognition. And recognition leads to withdrawal, not even confrontation. And the dating apps make this worse, not better, not at all. Dating apps amplify this dynamic perfectly. What do dating apps do? Well, they inflate perceived options, they reward passive selection, they reduce accountability, encourage comparison. So, us men, we feel easily replaceable, disposable, interchangeable. Combine that with content framing men as, bare minimum failures unless they exceed extremely high expectations, and, you get a predictable outcome. Men don't fight the system, they just disengage from it. And here's the part we miss. Men checking out of dating, well, we usually don't announce it. If I'm not talking to someone anymore, I'm not going to call that person up and tell them, "Look, I'm not talking to you anymore." We just check out. We don't make videos. We don't argue online. We just go our own way. We stop swiping. We stop asking women out. We stop planning dates. We stop investing emotionally. You know, and guys put that energy into work, fitness, hobbies, friends, or just, you know, peace. That's why you don't see a huge backlash movement, really. I mean, you hear a lot of complaining and the red pill movement and whatnot. I'm not saying they're completely wrong, but you see a lot of silence from, you know, the good guys, really. This isn't about women necessarily being the problem, because dating is a two-player game. It's men and women. But women aren't necessarily the problem, and this matters. So listen carefully. This is not about blaming women. And it's not about denying that, some men behave terribly and some women are pretty shitty as well. Sure, I'm not saying that isn't the case. But it is about incentives and signals. Remember that TikTok and YouTube and all those online social media stuff, it rewards extremes. Dating apps reward detachment. Bad experiences reinforce defensiveness. And men respond by opting out. We don't even escalate. And here's the uncomfortable truth. When dating becomes framed as entitlement instead of mutual interest, performance instead of connection, and evaluation instead of curiosity, the people who leave first are often the calm, decent, emotionally regulated men, the classic good guys that all the women are saying they're looking for. And they're checking out not because they can't date, they can, but because they don't want to participate in something that feels hostile, transactional, or exhausting. And that's the real loss here. Men aren't checking out of dating because they hate women. I don't think there are men who actually really hate women. I think most of us we actually really like women. Not all of them, not the ones I'm talking about here. Not that TikTok persona, but generally speaking, I think most men actually like women. That's why we're on these dating apps. That's why we want to date. That's why we want to find a girlfriend or a woman or a wife. But that's not why we're checking out. We're checking out because of dating as it currently is presented online. And often it doesn't feel worth the emotional cost. I get it. We're not angry enough to rage about it. We're not desperate enough to beg. We're just opting for peace. And that is a word you will hear a lot online. Men want peace. and we're choosing peace. We're opting out just to have peace. And if people want to understand what's happening in modern dating, they need to stop asking why, men are failing. And they need to start asking why so many of them are no longer playing the game. But that's just my take on it. I hope this was useful or maybe a little bit inspirational. And I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye bye.